Hello wonderful world, Elayne here, and today I want to talk to you guys about the books that I rated 5 stars in 2021. It is now January 1st, 2022. I was holding off on filming this in case my last book of the year was a 5-star read. So I have 10 books to talk about now, and I actually have none of the books to hold up and show you because they are either audiobooks on my Kindle, somebody is borrowing them, or they're at school. I'm just gonna put a little picture here of each book and hopefully you get the gist. So without further ado, let's jump into the very first 5-star read of 2021. And that book is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I wanted to read this. It was part of my classics that I want to read video, and I wanted to read this for a long time because I wanted to be able to watch the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's and say that I had also read the book. I ended up loving the book. I listened to it on audiobook. Michael C. Hall from Dexter narrated it, and that was just amazing. That was my first 5-star read, and for those of you that don't know Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's narrated from this guy who lives in New York City, and he has this neighbor named Holly Golightly who is very interesting. She's a very unique character to kind of read about, and you kind of see how he's kind of obsessed with her, not like in like a creepy way. She's like an enigma, and he just wants to learn more about her life, and so you kind of see Holly Golightly through the eyes of the narrator, and I really, really enjoyed this book. The next 5-star read was Pride and Prejudice by none other than Jane Austen. I actually have Pride and Prejudice. Oh my gosh, it's right here. I could have pulled it out, but I listened to it on audiobook. And yeah, another audiobook classic, and I really enjoyed Pride and Prejudice. If you haven't read Pride and Prejudice, you need to get on that. If you haven't seen the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie, you need to get on that. Both masterpieces, both works of art. The OG enemies to lovers. It's just great. What's not to love about Pride and Prejudice? It's funny. It makes you cry and laugh because it's so funny and it's also so sweet. But yeah, that was my second 5-star read of 2021. The third book that I rated 5 stars was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I also listened to this on audiobook. 2021 was the year of audiobooks for me. I jumped into audiobooks. It was something that I had never really done before because I tend to be a visual learner and I tend to zone out a lot when I'm listening, so I didn't ever think that audiobooks were for me. And then I was realizing that I just had to find the right ones. I had to find ones that were engaging and that had good narrators. And I really, really fell in love with audiobooks this year, which is something that I'm grateful for 2021. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds is a young adult book that is told in free verse. So it kind of reads like a really long poem. I really loved this book. It's won so many awards. It follows the story of this boy named Will, who has just seen his brother shot and killed due to gang violence. And Will decides immediately that he is going to get revenge. He is going to seek retaliation. So that's what he decides, and he gets into this elevator, and on the way down from his floor to the exit of his building, he comes in contact with all these different people who have died from gun violence. So it's kind of got a Christmas Carol vibes, and Will is kind of, you know, taking all this information in and rethinking, and then he leaves the elevator. And it's a really, really good story. I highly recommend it. It's just so good. It's really good. And what I love about it is that Jason Reynolds said that he wasn't trying to teach anything from this story. He just wanted to write it. But you learn so much from the story, and it's super quick. I honestly think the audiobook is like a couple hours, if that. You can squeeze it in a day, and it will really change your perspective. And for me, I just loved it so much. And I also loved that it was free verse. I had never really read anything like that before. And especially listening to it on audiobook narrated by Jason Reynolds was just phenomenal. Okay. Another audiobook. This is really funny for me. Like, if you would have told me last year that I'd have so many audiobooks on my 5-star reads, I would laugh at you. I would literally laugh at you. My next book is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which I listened to on audiobook. Okay, A Monster Calls is the story of a young boy growing up at the same time that his mother is dying. His life is crazy. While all of this is happening, a tree monster comes and visits him and says, I will tell you 3 stories. After I tell you these 3 stories, you will tell me one in return. And that's the deal. And the tree monster comes, tells him stories, and the boy learns, and he tells his story at the end, and it's just great. It really is a story of like family, grief, growing up, but it's got this fantastical element, which I loved because I am a big fan of when authors get across their points using fantasy elements and using like really big exaggerations and like adding a hint of magic to teach a real life lesson. That's something that I'm a big sucker for, and Patrick Ness does that wonderfully in A Monster Calls. You know, it's real life emotion and real life things that are happening and something that could actually happen, and then he adds the tree monster to like give it this fantastical element to make it even more magical. And I just loved it, and it's definitely 5 stars for me. I watched the movie afterwards, and I really, really loved the movie. I think it's so good. It will make you cry like a baby, though. Yes, it's so powerful. The book has so many quotable lines, and just lines and quotes that I will be thinking about forever. So, okay, one that I actually read as a book. That is Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Again But Better is probably one of my all-time favorite books now. In fact, I named my cat after one of the main characters. My cat's name is Pilot, after Pilot Penn from Again But Better. Again But Better follows the story of Shane, who feels that she has done college all wrong. She is a junior, she is studying pre-med, which isn't really what she wants to do, and she hasn't really made any friends, she hasn't really kissed any boys, you know, she's just feels like she's missing out on the college experience, so she decides to study abroad in England. And while in London, she meets this boy named Pilot, and she makes lots of friends, and she goes on lots of adventures. And she's studying creative writing, which is something that she's always wanted to do, but she never has. It's just the story of Shane learning to accept who she is and what she wants to do and kind of defying her family expectations. And there is a little hint of magic in there, which I'm a sucker for magical realism. I think we have determined that. So I loved Again But Better. I've never related more to a main character that I had with Shane. Not necessarily like her family life and like the pre-med thing, because I've always just been an English creative writing gal, but I related to how her mind worked and like the pop culture references that she uses. There are a lot of pop culture references. She talks about Taylor Swift, she talks about Lost. It's just her mind works in these pop culture ways and like in a fangirl nerd way, which like I appreciated so much. And I also am a huge fan of Christine Riccio. She's one of the main reasons that I make these videos, and she's one of the reasons that I am literally the person that I am today. So I just absolutely loved Again But Better, and it is just so special to me. The next book that I rated 5 stars is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. Get a Life, Chloe Brown is an adult romance novel about this girl named Chloe Brown who has a near-death experience in the very beginning of the book, and her life flashes before her eyes, and she's like, no, I don't like my life. I gotta get a life. I gotta fix something. So she makes a list of things to do in order to get a life. And one of those things includes moving out of her family home and getting her own apartment. She does this, and the superintendent of this building is named Red. And they don't really like each other very much. This is dual POV. Red thinks Chloe is the most spoiled, privileged person in the world, and Chloe thinks Red is just a complete asshole, like a dickhole. Like the worst person ever. And they're coming to realize that like maybe they don't really understand each other like they thought they did. Chloe actually suffers from chronic pain, so she has to deal with that, and Red kind of has some trauma of his own. And so what I loved the most about this romance novel is that while these characters are falling in love, they're also learning to fall in love with themselves, and they actually have to work on themselves and like grow through past trauma and learn how to like take care of themselves before they just jump into a relationship. And you know, Red has some stuff that he needs to work on, and we kind of get to see that, which I really appreciated. I also loved the representation within this novel. Chloe is a plus-size Black woman who suffers from chronic pain. What I loved so much about this representation is that it made me kind of rethink the way that I think, especially with chronic pain. I had never read a book with a main character who suffered from this before, and it really made me rethink, you know, how to be a more inclusive person and how to go about like making spaces more accommodating for larger groups of people. And so that's what I loved. I loved when a romance book really gets you in the feels and it has amazing cuteness with a little bit of smut, but then also challenges your mind views. Like, what more could you want? So I absolutely loved Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I cannot wait to finish the rest of the series. Jumping it back to Christine Riccio, I also read her book Better Together. Absolutely loved it. Oh my gosh, freaking hilarious. Made me cry like a baby multiple times, but also had me literally laugh out loud laughing. So Better Together is the story of long-lost sisters named Siri and Jamie. Jamie lives with her dad on the West Coast and Siri lives with her mom on the East Coast. Siri wants to be a professional ballerina, but after an injury that takes her out of the ballerina game forever, she goes to a camp in Colorado called Find Yourself, something like that. It's about reconnecting with yourself and finding yourself. And Jamie, for reasons of her own, also has to go to this camp. And they meet there. And they're like, whoa. And they kind of decide to pull a little bit of a parent trap. This book also has a hint of magic. I don't want to like say what it is that much. That's why I didn't really say what it was in Again But Better, because I think it's fun if like the magic is a surprise. But Siri and Jamie pull kind of a parent trap, and there's a dash of magic, and it's just so great. Jamie's a stand-up comedian, so we get some comedy in there. And she's so funny. She's literally so funny. And there's also romances. There is a queer romance, and there is a lot of representation, and this book is just so good, and it's so funny, and the cover is beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And I loved Better Together, and I cannot wait to read more books by Christine Riccio. I have 3 more books to talk about, and the first one is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay. If you have not read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you are living wrong. You are doing something wrong. You need to fix that immediately. You need to add it to the top of your TBR. It needs to be the first book you read in 2022, because The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo forever changed me, okay? I know that sounds dramatic, but it is just such a good book. It is literally so good. It is about this very famous woman named Evelyn Hugo. She was a movie star back in the olden days, back in Golden Age Hollywood. And now she is a grown-ass old lady, and she is talking with this journalist, telling her life story, and it's chronicled within her 7 husbands. The story starts and it's like her first husband, and it tells the story. Second husband, the story. And it's just telling Evelyn Hugo's story, and there's like a good twist, and I don't want to say it because I don't want to spoil it, but if you must know the twist, you can look it up yourself. Oh my gosh. Evelyn Hugo, it is so good. You root for the characters so much, and Taylor Jenkins Reid just writes books like nobody else. I think she's one of the best writers of our time. I really honestly believe that. I have read 4 of her books now, and I genuinely think she is so talented and such an amazing writer, and I cannot wait to read more books by her. But yes, 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was a 5-star read for me. 5 stars, 6 stars, 7 stars, 8 stars, a million stars. A million stars to Evelyn Hugo. Okay, the next book is Percy Jackson. I reread that this year, and that's of course 5 stars because it was nostalgic, it's fun, it's fast, it's funny. It's Percy Jackson. So yeah, Percy Jackson, he's a demigod, right? He's half human, half Greek god. You follow his story. It's fun. It's cute, fresh, quirky. Just amazing. Percy Jackson is such a funny narrator. He's literally hilarious, and I love that he narrates it. Yeah, I want to reread the rest of the series because I know that there's going to be a new TV show that Rick Riordan himself is working on, so I want to reread the whole series before that comes out. That's kind of why I redid that. I was trying to do like a 24-hour readathon with all the Percy Jackson books, but like I definitely failed, and I definitely only read 1 book. But that's fine. Things happen. These things do happen. And until you stop with these. Sorry, Phantom of the Opera quote. Okay, my last 5-star read of 2021 was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Malibu Rising actually won the Goodreads Award for like the best historical fiction of 2021. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I got it immediately right when it came out. And it follows the story of this huge epic party. It takes place in like the 80s. And for those of you that have read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising actually follows the story of Mick Riva's kids. Mick Riva is one of Evelyn Hugo's husbands. So it follows the story of his 4 children who are all famous and talented within their own right. And every year they throw this banger of a party. It's huge, it's massive, it's on the beach. Everybody who's somebody is there. There are lots of drugs. There are lots of alcohol. There is a lot of dancing, a lot of sex, and just a lot of craziness. And at the end of this party this one year, there happens to be a fire. And it's just everything's on fire. Okay, their whole house is on fire. And the story kind of starts from there, and it's chronicling what happened for them to get to this point, for them to get to this fire. And let me just tell you, It is so good. I sobbed my eyes out at Malibu Rising, and then I immediately wrote a review of it on Goodreads, and I saw people were trashing it, and I wanted to fight all of them, and anyone who gives Malibu Rising less than 5 stars is crazy. Sorry, that's just my opinion, to each their own. But yeah, Malibu Rising is so good. It has so many good quotes, and one of the main characters, her name is Nina. I just want to hug her like so much. Like if I could hug any fictional character, I'd want to hug her, and I'd want to tell her that it's all going to be okay. You just connect with these 4 siblings so much, and just seeing their relationships and like how it's grown over the years and how they take care of each other when times are tough. It's just so great to witness, and it's just so great to read about, and I absolutely loved it. So yes, those were the 10 books that I rated 5 stars this year. I cannot wait to read more books in 2022. I'm setting my Goodreads goal to 50 books again, which I did not meet that this year, but 2022, as Goodreads said, better luck in 2022. Isn't that kind of rude? Goodreads said better luck to me because I didn't read 50 books. Excuse you, Goodreads. I tried my best. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know some of the books that you rated 5 stars in 2021, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys more in 2022. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and whatever you are up to right now, I'm thinking of you. It's a new year, new beginnings. Let's hope this year is amazing, and I will talk to you guys so soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.